All right, Steve, now that we've done the inspection, let's talk about some options, right? I can see the issues that you're having, and I think we want to talk about, I guess, what kind of options you'd have to do a repair. But I think it's important too, first to understand just what causes problems like this, and just how construction works at the very beginning when the driveway was first poured, right? So when your house was built, it was an empty lot most likely, right? And that had been undisturbed for a very long period of time. All the soil that we would call on your lot, we would call it virgin soil, which means it hadn't been touched in a very long time, which means that nature had compacted it and made it very stable surface, right? And what happens when they do construction is they disturb that virgin soil, right? They got to dig out for your foundation, they got to dig out for your driveway as well. When it comes time to pour your driveway, what they have to do is bring in new loose fill. The loose fill is never going to be compacted and as stable as the virgin soil that existed before. So they put up forms and they pour concrete. They should compact. There's very strict protocol on compacting it and laying in things like crushed stone, other aggregates to give drainage, things like that. And that rarely happens. There's no rules around that. There's strict protocol on how to do it appropriately, but contractors like to do things fast and cheap, and that's usually what you have, and probably the result is what you're experiencing now. So once that's all happened, over time, different things can happen to your house, right? To your driveway, right? And so the result could be like what you see out there, cracking and sinking in different parts. Usually it's one of three things that is happening, or multiple things. First, poor compaction, right? If you have very loose soil and you pour concrete over it and then you drive a vehicle over it many times, you know what's going to happen, right? It's going to sink over time and it's not going to sink evenly. And so that's why you're going to get cracks and uneven concrete, right? And then also what's typically happening is drying and shrinking of the soil that's below. So another soil issue, right? Over time, Mother Nature heats that concrete and creates an oven underneath and will dry out that soil. If you can imagine like a ball of clay, if you put that outside, how it shrinks and cracks and it actually becomes very brittle. So if you have the soil shrinks, it creates gaps underneath there, and that's another opportunity for you have with that uneven settling where you're going to have the driveway give away because it's not supported right. That and also what we call wetting and softening. So that would be from the water, right? So when it rains, you might have heavy rains in this area occasionally. And so what can happen is some areas could get washed out and you wouldn't even be visible to you. And so obviously creating those gaps, again, a problem with the soil, the substrate that's supposed to be supporting that concrete. Also, if you can imagine just if it turned to mud and you didn't have washouts, what's happening, right? I'm sure you've, just like I have, walked in mud before and you sink. So it's lost its integrity because it was poorly compacted or not at all. It absorbed a lot of water and then you have too much flexibility to drive a vehicle over it and it's gonna give away again, right? And so there are a few different ways to approach a project like this. And I'm just gonna pull up a quick visual for us to use as an example, right? So mudjacking and concrete replacement are kind of historically the only choices that you'd have. And so let's look at mudjacking. Mudjacking is a system that's not used that much anymore. People are still doing it, but we've learned that it's not really that effective. What mudjacking is the crew will drill a series of holes that are about the size of a tennis ball. Once they've done that, what they'll do is they stick a pipe basically in it that's hooked up to a rig that's in their truck that has a mixture called slurry. That mixture is concrete and mud and could be other things mixed in with it, sawdust, anything to give it volume. And they pump it in to those holes that are very high pressure. They're relying on pressure to make change. And so this wet mixture that's very heavy, it's about 100 to 150 pounds per cubic foot. They're pumping it underneath. They're hoping to fill the gaps that have been created by Mother Nature, and then hoping that over time that this very wet cement mixture with mud in it will form as part of the original slab. And you know what we said about having a problem with the substrate, the earth below, the weight of the concrete now was the issue, right? Or because of the weak soil below couldn't support that weak concrete. Now we've just made that concrete much heavier, and so you can imagine the problem will persist. Typically, what happens is it accelerates the problem, right? It's very messy too. Those big holes are going to be very obvious to anybody. And when they're doing it, you can imagine there's only an off switch and an on switch. They turn it on and there's a very high pressure. They're relying on that pressure to fill the gaps and then ultimately, hopefully lift the concrete. And they can't be very precise with that stuff because it's just an off or on, and so there's some guesswork. They usually have multiple people standing on the slab just to make sure that it doesn't pop up too much. So they can't be very precise with it. To get your driveway perfectly level is nearly impossible. And over time, that sludge is going to move, right? Just because it's a liquid, and that's what liquids do, right? So it's not going to be stable. It's not going to solve the original problem, which is the soil beneath, right? So I would hope that you would agree that that's something that we would rule out. It hasn't been effective. It's not a long-term solution. And as a matter of fact, it usually exacerbates the problems, right? And so the other option that I understand why a lot of people would look at this as an option, right? Rip out what you got now and pour a new slab, right? Let's just start all over again and have something that's at least new. And so there are some inherent issues with that, unfortunately. It's very expensive, as you can imagine, right? It's very labor intensive to dig that up. It's very noisy. They drive on your yard, destroy your yard. There's many things that are ugly about it, especially the expense, right? But the most important thing to consider is that they still didn't solve the problem. You're basically replacing what you have with what you have. What you have is a heavy concrete on soil that can't support it. And typically, new driveways, when somebody goes through this process, they haven't addressed the real issue. And the new driveway ends up cracking within sometimes just 30 days. And I'm not kidding. The issue is still there, and it just has a new subject to crack, right? And so that's what concrete does. So that said, we can talk a little bit about what we do, and that's poly-renewal, right? So poly-renewal is a system that is going to address the underlying issue, right? And so what our crew does is when they come in, they drill a series of very small holes. They're 4 feet apart from each other. The holes are about the size of a penny. And so our gun, we have two sides that are liquid that will come together on our gun and create basically what is the polymer that's going to be filling the gaps that are below the concrete that you have now. So what this does is we're not relying on pressure, we're relying on the fact that it expands. It expands very rapidly, turns into a material that's as strong as concrete, but it is very light. It is only about 4 to 6 pounds per cubic foot. Remember I said mud jacking was 100 to 150 and is just going to exacerbate that problem? We're not exacerbating that problem, we're fixing the problem by first, when we spray and it expands, it's going to compact the earth below until there's enough pressure where it can start lifting, and it will lift very slowly. And like I said, I don't know if I said it before, but it is a science and it is an art form. Our guys are very experienced, and I'll show you some videos where they can be very precise so that we can get your driveway completely level. So we've repaired something that was good to begin with, but installed improperly, and we're fixing the issue that would just continue to crack new driveways. It's compacted, the earth below is supporting the driveway so it stays level. It's as strong as concrete, but very light. And it has a couple other qualities too that really help with the longevity of your driveway. It is water resistant. It's hydro, darn it, but forgot that word, but it's going to prevent water from going underneath, right? And so that was one of the problems, right? The wetting and getting sloppy and muddy like that, and so getting weak. So we're protecting it from the water. It's also a thermal barrier. So when the sun hits the concrete, remember I said that it created an oven below? But what we've done is we've created a thermal barrier between that concrete and the soil below. So the soil below is not going to heat up. At any rate, what we're doing is we're protecting the integrity. After compacting that soil, we're indefinitely protecting the integrity of the soil below. So that way we've eliminated that as the issue, right? So let's take a look at a couple of examples of some of the work that we've done. Here is I'm sorry, first of what I wanted to do is I went right to the wrong thing. I wanted to have our engineer explain a little bit about what it is we
Uneven,
do.
settled, and cracked concrete slabs can be